Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. My name is Anna Green, and I'm going to go ahead and start the recording. It started automatically. Perfect. My name is Anna Green. I'm a proud alumna and staff member in UNC's Alumni and Community Relations. Thank you all for joining us today for the Alumni Career Panel, Careers in Entertainment. Today, we will learn from and connect with fellow UNC Bears working in a variety of fields, or I'm sorry, in a variety of roles in the field of entertainment. Before I introduce you to our panelists, I'd like to share a couple of housekeeping items with you all. First, this event will be recorded and will be available on demand a week after the event on the alumni website, and I'll post that link in the chat in a little bit. Second, I invite you to start building your network and reach out to our panelists after the event. I will also post their contact information in the chat towards the end of this virtual event. As we highlight the careers of these alumni, I invite students, fellow staff, and faculty to ask questions throughout the Q&A feature in the chat. Now, please help me welcome our panelists. Panelists, please introduce yourself by stating your name, your pronouns, title, the organization you work for, UNC degree, and a little bit about yourself. Brianna, we'll start with you.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Brianna Harris, and I use she, her pronouns. I am a graduate with a master's in jazz studies, specifically on saxophone from the class of 2014. And currently I work as a musician and artist manager. I own Harris Artist Management, which is an artist representation agency, primarily representing visual artists working in public art. And then I also co-own and manage and perform in a band called The Burrows, which is an original 9-member funk and soul band, and work as a freelance saxophonist, songwriter, producer, and musician.
Wonderful. Thank you, Brianna. Hadley, how about we go over to you next?
She, her, hers, and I majored in theater studies and recreation tourism and hospitality. Right now I'm a variety of jobs, actually. So I work as a production assistant on set, so I've worked on things like Bel Air and Succession. I also work at the Academy Museum as theater staff, and my main job is I'm a page at Paramount.
Awesome. Thank you, Hadley. Oscar, why don't you have us close you out?
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Oscar Whitney Jr. My pronouns are he, him, his. I graduated in the class of 2021 with a Bachelor of the Arts in Musical Theater. And I am an actor, currently in Alicia Keys' new Broadway musical, Hell's Kitchen. But I've acted regionally, I've acted on cruises, and yeah, that's what I'm in right now.
Wonderful. Thank you, Oscar. And for myself, I kind of skipped over that a little bit at the beginning. Again, my name is Anna Green. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I'm a UNC graduate with a vocal performance degree in 2001, done some regional work, and locally here, a long-term member of the Greeley Chorale, and have turned that experience into event production now. So with all that, I'll be facilitating this afternoon, and we will jump right in. So beginning with our first question, how did your UNC experience help you launch into your career and arrive at your current role? Brianna, we'll go ahead and start with you on that one.
Yeah, so my UNC experience was really critical, I think, in laying the foundation for everything that I'm doing today. So I think it gave me a really solid foundation in the craft of my work as a musician. Just being able to be kind of as well trained and solid of a performer and a musician as I could be. And I have found that having a really strong foundation in your craft, whatever your particular creative discipline is, allows you to have a lot of context that is transferable and applicable to other roles and opportunities within the arts and entertainment industries. So there's a lot of people, for instance, who, know how to do event marketing, but they don't specifically know like how to talk with artists and arts audiences. And so I think my time at UNC really helped lay that foundation. Not just the classes I was in and professors I was studying with, but some of the sort of extracurricular opportunities, and specifically opportunities through the TA/GA I had at the time, which was highly involved in things like the UNC Jazz Festival, where my role was to coordinate the entire student worker team in a large festival that had like 7,000 or 8,000, school attendees there and guest artists that were coming in, this whole infrastructure. So interacting with that and kind of latching onto those opportunities has informed a lot of the work I'm doing now, especially in artist management, arts marketing, and those spaces.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Hadley, how about you? How did your UNC experience help launch your career and arrive at where you currently are?
Yeah, I'm gonna kind of piggyback off of Brianna as well and say that the extracurricular activities were really beneficial for me, especially at UNC. Like my senior year, it was the piggybacking off of COVID, and I got to direct two student shows, and I got to produce four, and so it really gave me the opportunity to kind of do things that you wouldn't normally get to do, especially out in the professional world, and have that experience, even though I was still a student. I think my most like proud moment was I got to event manage the Start Salon, which I don't know if you all are doing that again this year, but it's where it's kind of like a French style salon at a local Greeley venue, and showcase the art from the performing and visual arts students. And it was an amazing opportunity because I got to combine my love for theater as well as my love for events, bringing together my two majors, which is really what I'm doing out here as well. So it was really amazing to get to bridge that gap.
Wonderful. That sounds like an event that we need to keep going. Oscar, how about you? How did your UNC experience help launch your career and arrive at the current role that you're in?
So I think the training itself, the musical theater training itself is quite rigorous, just like the industry is. And I started theater kind of late, so it was like, I came into school, hit the ground running with 8 a.m. dance classes, and we're singing every single day, and we're learning how to act and like apply all these three things um, to each other to work them together. And I found that not only like the training itself, but like there were so many productions to be a part of. So like even in a time when I wasn't cast in say a main stage show, there were still like student productions that I could be a part of, and like really just like, even if I wasn't in the big show, I could still work on my craft and like focus on my lessons and my studies. And it was just, I feel like I got a really well-rounded education in my studies, and that really catapulted me to where I am today because I really just leaned into all this new information that I was receiving.
Wonderful. Yeah. And I'll add to that as well. I kind of agree with, everything that you all have been saying, where we have a lot of opportunity at UNC to have a variety of different things that we can work on, whether it's just performing or learning things on the backside of production. You can volunteer for different areas. And that's kind of what I did as well. Was I learned a little bit about stage direction. I learned about costuming. I learned about stage management, different things that are done on the back side of it. And for myself, I was able to then turn that and transition into event production, which is really just a big show every time that you put on an event, right? So it was all relatable experience. And I had the opportunity to try my hands at a lot of different things. And it was very challenging, but you also, for myself, I felt very comfortable and supported by all of the faculty and staff in trying something that I didn't necessarily have any experience in, but I wanted to learn more about. And so I felt very safe in that environment. And that's definitely taken me into my role here. So let's move on to question number 2. Given the dynamic nature of the entertainment industry with technological advancements, changing consumer behaviors, emerging trends, things like that, how would you how have you been able to adapt to that evolving landscape? And what advice do you have for students on staying agile and proactive in response to these kind of industry shifts as they embark on their careers in entertainment? Hadley, I think we'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, it's changed so much, especially since the pandemic. I mean, we're doing these career panels on Zoom nowadays. But I'd say it's really important that you learn the new technology and figure out how it can work with you and not just totally deny it, which I know is a really big problem, especially now that we're getting to the strikes that happened this past summer with the writers and actors strike. They were really worried about AI, and it definitely shouldn't take away people's jobs. That definitely was a very, very successful strike getting those terms met. But also, when it comes to other factors and departments within movie making and entertainment, you kind of have to use the new technology to your advantage as well. But it's a very close line to toe. Like at Paramount, for example, we have a sign shop, which is where they make all of the signs for everything that you see in movies. And it's the only sign shop that still specializes in hand painting. But they also, on the other hand, just bought a $50,000 laser printer for their shop so that they could compete with the other studios around Los Angeles. So you kind of have to take both the handwritten digital versus the digital media and more technologically advanced things.
Great. Yeah, that's really important to have that balance. Thank you, Hadley. Oscar, let's take over to you.
I'd say from the standpoint of an actor, particularly in theater, that has pretty much remained the same forever and ever, just like acting. However, the when COVID hit and self-tapes became like a major form of auditioning, and it still kind of is. I remember that being like, whoa, like what are we doing? And we had a lot of guest artists come in my senior year and talk about like what they were seeing and what was changing and what remains the same. For the most part, it's important that you can be seen and heard. So it's like, okay, at the very basis, you can have a cell phone or your laptop or your iPad. But some people were like, and if you want to get a little more advanced, put a headphone in, edit the sound to where what you're hearing is perfectly lined up with what you're singing. And I just remember taking a lot of notes and realizing that, okay, there's a lot of change happening. And I think like social media, I find a lot of new information there on like what's changing and what's going around because honestly, um, there's like people who would consider themselves like actor career coaches and things like that, and they'll like so they'll say what they're noticing is different in the industry, and I'll say, okay, well, how's that lining up with like how I've experienced it in real time, and is it worth it? So I like for actors specifically, it's like okay, definitely be up to date on like how like self-tape, social media, website, how we're living in a digital world nowadays. So that's really how you have to market yourself and um, be posting, which can also be kind of fatiguing at times, as we all know. But yeah, I think just even a little bit of just knowing what you can use at the bare minimum, whether that's your cell phone, ring light, a full studio. It could it can really help you in the long run.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you, Oscar. Brianna, how about you? How do you feel about that from your perspective?
Yeah, so technology in the music industry specifically is changing all the time and historically has changed all the time. And musicians as a whole have not always been great about being in the forefront of that change. I do think, kind of like Hadley mentioned, there's real advantage to creatives being in the conversation at the forefront of that technological change and helping write the policy for it to be artist friendly and not just reacting to it or taking what kind of the the people in charge of those new technologies, like the ways they would have it be. So the more that artists are part of those conversations and curious about it and having our voices heard, the better it is for artists long term. As far as like adjusting and adapting, I think one mindset that's really important to have headed into a career in really anything, but specifically entertainment, is like you're never going to be done developing. Like the idea that you are going to come out of school or out of your degree fully formed and then do that thing you learned exactly that way for 40 years. First of all, no one's career is like that anymore, but particularly careers in entertainment are not like that anymore. And careers are really long too. I know that like it seems like, especially if you're in school right now or like in the early stages of your career, that things move really fast and they're, you know, you never have enough time, but like the whole span of a career is like a long trajectory and we all want to be doing this a really long time. So I think staying really curious, staying plugged in with trends in the industry that are happening, and you don't have to adopt or become the expert on every single one of them, but I think, you know, having resources that at least keep you informed of what is happening, having a diverse set of peers too, who maybe are experts in that, having multi-generational support networks who get, you know, people older and younger than you in the industry who can kind of share experience with those new platforms. I think all of that is helpful, but the main thing is just staying pretty open-minded and curious, and also, like Hadley said, like not treating any of those changes as inherently great or awful, but just something that's happening.
Right, exactly. Kind of taking each as it comes and determining what's valid, what you know, kind of want to go with and what you need to learn more about. Yeah, that's great. Thank you all very much. So next question, considering the increasing focus on diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice in various industries, including entertainment, how do you actively promote and contribute to creating a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive environment in your work and within the industry at large? Oscar, let's start with you on this one.
Absolutely. I think I've worked with so many different people and so many from so many different backgrounds, and like I think just like being able to stay up on current events, learning about other cultures or people of different backgrounds, it behooves you in this industry because you're going to see all those different people. And particularly in storytelling, even though there may be stories that I'm not telling, it's important to like be aware of those stories, go support those stories so that everyone, gets a chance to like be in the spotlight and fit and not feel like they're unseen or you're having to like tiptoe around your lived experience. So I think in my like personally, I love to read. I love to read a lot of books. I like so I'm always like trying to figure out what's something that I'm not well versed on, uh and I seek that out and I'm like, okay, great. So now if someone comes in and they're say I'll just I'll just say like they're different from me, I can at least have some knowledge on that. And if someone comes around and they're like not so well, they're not so well versed on it, I can say, well, hey, here is this. We're all on the same page. Does that make sense? Like, and I think that also goes at like to I think that also works for helping the career at large because you like Brianna was saying, his career is so long. So it helps to have an open mind, because you're going to be meeting so many different people, you're going to be absorbing so much information, and it just it really it's such a collaborative career that it really doesn't help to not to like be closed off or not ready to receive someone's lived experience, whether they're trying to like educate you on that or whether you're educating yourself. It's just really important to be like a sponge when it comes to that sort of thing because um, there's obviously there are many things that you've not experienced that you don't know, and maybe that you do know and that you may have a commonality on. And when you find that, that's where I feel like that's where this community thrives in yeah, like the collaborative nature of it all.
Thank you, Oscar. Brianna, let's go to you on that one.
Yeah, that's such a good question and a huge question. I think a lot of times when having these conversations about diversity, equity, and inclusion within entertainment, like the way these conversations are had, particularly, you know, amongst like groups of people that are maybe earlier career students, is like that this is always the task of like some entity like larger and more powerful than ourselves. And to be honest, like it, it is also their job. Like this is a group project and something that I think people at all levels of the industry need to be accountable for. We're kind of like long past people like, not actively taking a look at this and taking a look at like who they're hiring, what kind of stories they're telling, what their lineups look like, what the programming they're presenting looks like. But I think also if you are like in a student space or early career or independent or a small business, like you have more power than you think you do to affect that change too. Like I'm a sole proprietor essentially in my business, my management business. I'm the owner and the only employee, like work with some contractors. And then in my band, like it's essentially also a small business, with pretty consistent personnel. And like there's sort of limits to how much really hands-on things like hiring, for example, that we do. So that's not exactly a space that we have a lot of opportunity to affect change. But where we can, and where like I can specifically, is like, well, who else are we recommending for opportunities? Like, and what does the range of representation look like there? Or if we have a space where like our voice is being heard, or we carry some weight in that space, like how can we use that little bit of power to move the needle a little bit? So the further I get into my career, like, and especially like the more security I kind of have in the work I'm doing, where, I've got a little bit more credibility than I used to have, or like a little bit more freedom because I am self-employed and I'm not like answering to an employer who I'm worried about what they might think. Like anywhere I have a little bit more of that power, like I try to like make sure I'm actually using it in that way to sort of, again, move the needle in ways I can to make spaces look the way that, I want them to look, including the people that I think should be included. And sometimes that's also just through having like honest conversations with the context you do have. I think like what I see specifically a lot in like the public art world is there's a lot more conversations nowadays about diversity and representation and inclusion in artists and projects that are just getting selected for opportunities, which is great. But I've also seen this trend where like there's so much pressure put on the artists who are selected for those opportunities, particularly if they're artists of color or from a specific background or whatever. And there's a lot of pressure by those committees for that selected artist to like tell a story that represents like everyone and everything. And like I think that is something too that like anyone in arts and entertainment spaces can take a look at really honestly and be like, hey, we need to be telling more diverse stories, and also we need to let those stories like be powerful individual stories and not like be weighted to speak for like an entire group of people, like just like any story. And I think the more opportunity there is for that to happen more frequently, I think the more positive direction the industry is going to move.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for those great examples. Hadley, how about you?
Yeah, I think like what Oscar said was really, really insightful, where you have to educate yourself on different experiences and different backgrounds. Because I think at the level where I think a lot of college students are, where you don't have the power to choose what shows are going to be greenlit through the network, which programs are going to be put onto the big stage that season, the best you can do for yourself is to educate yourself on those stories, so that way when the time comes for you to be the person who is then in charge of deciding what the lineup is going to be, you're controlling those stories and making it diverse and picking the um, voices that you want to be heard. And going along with that, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself with the next question, but it's really important to network with the people around you who are diverse and have those different stories than you. And I think especially in bigger cities, like I know Oscar's in New York, I'm in Los Angeles, there are so many resources and so many groups of people who are young artists who just want to be involved, who want to get to know other people and different stories. Like I'm part of a group called Group Effort Initiative, where we like have people come and speak to us about, the women who worked on John Wick 4 or something like that, where you're able to get all of these stories and collect them for yourself. And then when you are in those positions where you have more power, I feel like you can really share those experiences and collaborate with the people around you, because obviously you're not going to know everything about everyone and every culture and background. And so that collaboration is also really, really important aspect to, I think, diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives.
Yeah, absolutely, Headley. Thank you very much. I think if it's okay, since you started on that, we're going to just continue with you on that question. So the next question, networking is crucial in the entertainment industry. Can you share some further insights into how you strategically built and leveraged your network to open doors and create opportunities in your career? What advice do you have for students on effective networking?
Yeah, I think the biggest, like, best piece of advice I ever got, I think I got it when I was in college actually, was you need to network horizontally, because the people who are at your level or right above you right now, they're the ones who are going to talk to you. Like if you go, Margot Robbie's manager, she's not going to want to talk to you. She's busy. She's got 1,000 emails. Yours is going to get lost in the mud. But if you go to Margot Robbie's assistant's assistant, they're going to have more time. They're more at where you are. They want to grow with you. And then at that point, especially going back to the last question, when you are at that spot where you'll be up there at the big table, the head of the table, then you'll be able to bring those people up with you, and the people you've already networked with, you trust their instincts, you trust their opinions, and they can be not only like your networking acquaintances, but also genuine peers, sounding boards for ideas that you have regarding whatever your art and your passion is.
Yeah, I love that network horizontally. I haven't heard that before, but that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I love that very much. Brianna, let's go over to you.
Yeah, that's such a great point, Headley, and like one I try to think about a lot too. So I think there's this idea in, especially like in the entertainment industry, that networking is like this separate activity from community building. Like it exists over here and you have to like wear a formal outfit and like speak and act in a different way than you would in just your day-to-day life as an artist. And it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be this scary formal thing. I think of networking at its like baseline definition is asking for help. Like networking is community building and asking for help. And a lot of, yeah, like Headley mentioned, a lot of the best networking that can happen is with people that you already know or are already like one degree of separation connected to. I think that's a really good place to start. So I know throughout the years, like I've done a ton of outreach and networking with like people I met in school, people I met at like a music festival or a gig, like a friend of a friend in this market. Oh, who can I call about finding what venues like might be good for routing through Southern California or through this part of the Mountain West, like just any connection like that. And I think entering it like as a two-way conversation too, where you aren't just looking for people who can help you, but you are bringing something of value to the table. And that doesn't always have to be something of equal value, like it might not be at all points in your career, but I think it goes a long way to offer either like a service exchange to somebody or just like mutual support of a project, or as simple as like if you take someone you're trying to network with out to coffee, buy their coffee. Like it's amazing how much like that gets missed, especially by students. It's like if you're trying to like connect with a mentor, like buy their lunch or buy their coffee. It's a small gesture that just like it is meaningful and lets them know that like this is an actual relationship you're trying to develop. So yeah, I think just like try to make the hang. Like that just, and it should be like ideally it's people you like want to be hanging out with anyways. And those are going to be the most productive connections. It's not like all this category of like industry insiders that you wouldn't want to have a relationship with anyways. So
Right, absolutely agreed on all those points. Thank you, Brianna. Oscar, how about you?
This is a great, great question because I think there's so much pressure, um, at least like, like when we hear about networking in our classes, it's like, okay, so you're gonna have to get out there and you're gonna have to know some people because this industry is a lot of hearsay. And it is. But I love what Hadley's saying, networking horizontally, because a lot of the people that are gonna speak your name or the names that you're gonna speak are your classmates or people that you've done small shows with, because you never know, something might come up. And you have a friend who's right for that, or you're right for something that someone else heard about, and they're like, oh yeah, Oscar can do that. So like just like knowing your peers and being like network with them is a fantastic way to start. I'd also say for me, I like when I graduated, I was like, I was like, go big or go home. I'm sending DMs and messages to people that I look up to in this industry. And what do you know? I got Grammy nominated artists replying to me saying, hey, if you never need anything, here's my number. It's like you never know who who's gonna like respond to you and like give you the time of day. Even if they don't, give you their contact information, they're just like, oh, thank you for that. Thank you for that sentiment. Um, I'm looking forward to working with you one day. Stuff like that. I just feel like it can be as big as you want it. It can be as little as you want it. I think being interested and being interesting really helps. And even if you feel like you're not interesting, you are, because the people that you're trying to connect with, they don't know you. There's a little bit of mystery there. And by being interested in them, it'll return itself. I found even like when guest artists would come, specific ones that I would connect with for like if you're a student, um, like staying a little bit after and talking to them. When my senior year, Aisha Jackson, Broadway actress, class of 2013, musical theater degree. She came and did a vocal master class with the senior class that year. I stayed after and talked with her for a little bit, and she ended up being my mentor. And like when I first moved to the city, she really took me under her wing, and that I feel like that really um, like pushed me forward. Just having someone to like ask questions and just talk to about how I'm doing and things like that. So I feel like you can networking can be whatever you want it to be. I've also spoken my own classmates' names in rooms and gotten them jobs also. And to wrap all that up, I think just being a kind person, someone who is thoughtful, a good listener, it goes such a long way, because we're out of the time of like, your talent exceeding your character, if that makes sense. People 9 times out of 10 will want to work with someone who's pleasant to be around, a joy in the room, as opposed to someone who can just like really sing, but they just aren't a nice person. Um, so yeah, that's what I'd say.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Yeah,
that's
can I
great.
add
Thank you.
something, Anna?
Yeah, please.
Just going off of that too, like networking, you need to follow through with the people you're networking with as well. Like it can't just be like, oh, we got coffee that one time and then that's it. You never talk to them again. You need, because people tend to forget, they're busy people. They forget about you unless you're like in their mindset. So especially like if you want to work on film sets, all of the jobs I've gotten are through people texting me. And once the strike was over, you have to text the second ADs and be like, hey, obviously I'm free right now. Do you have any openings? Are you working on a project? And once they see that text, they're like, oh, I didn't know you were free right now. Like I thought you were going to be busy. I just assumed that you were going to be busy. Then once you check up on that and keep checking in on them, they're going to keep remembering you and offering you up for those opportunities.
Right, absolutely. Thank you for adding that, Hadley. And that's kind of where um, I think you all have touched on some wonderful points in networking. And I think what I would add to that is, building those relationships to start, but then maintaining those relationships, Hadley, kind of like you were talking about, right? It's not just about, hey, can I ask you this question? Or hey, can you do this for me? Making those connections, but it's about caring about the other person, being excited for them and whatever they might be doing. So that means kind of staying up to date on what they're doing in their lives, in their careers, how you can maybe provide some help or assistance to them, or even just kudos to them, right? Hey, I saw you were doing this in this industry magazine. I'm going to go ahead and just send you a text and say, that's really fantastic. Anything like that, just maintaining those relationships, then that also keeps you top of mind for the individuals. And it's not that there's anything wrong with every aspect of that relationship being you asking a question or you saying, hey, I'm free, or anything like that. But if you can also reciprocate that by being interested in what it is that's going on in their lives and in their careers, then I think that just kind of builds that relationship beyond just the business card exchange, if you will, and brings you just to a different level in their mind. So all right, so moving on. Next question, reflecting on a specific challenge that you encountered in your career, can you share how you overcame that challenge and maybe highlight the lessons learned from that experience? How would you advise students to approach and learn from similar challenges in their future careers in the entertainment industry? Hadley, let's go ahead and go over to you on this one.
Yeah. Okay. I'm like, what were my challenges? I think the biggest challenge was moving out to Los Angeles. I didn't know really anyone. Unfortunately, I'm not a Nepo baby, so I didn't have those immediate connections. Um, but even though I didn't have big, my dad's not a producer or something, I still had connections from fellow Bears, people I've worked on projects with, short films who've moved out here before. And so when I moved out here, my whole like full-time job, I'd say, was applying for jobs and getting coffee and networking with people that I had already done a project with or knew or went to school with or used to have a connection somehow. And my first job out here, working on Succession, because they came out to Los Angeles for 2 weeks, I got because I got coffee with a friend who knew somebody who knew someone who I then texted, and they were like, hey, we're actually looking for a production assistant. Like, do you want to be on it? And I was like, well, yeah, of course, I'd love to. And so reaching out to those people and sharing, I think, what your passion is and what your skill is, but also hearing their stories as well is really important. Because if you don't share what you want to do, if you don't share your passion, then nobody else is going to know what you want to do. And they won't even think to offer you anything in return because you haven't vocalized your wants to them.
Right, absolutely. Thank you. Oscar, let's go over to you on this one.
So I would say one of and probably the biggest challenge so far in my career was also like a move related challenge, was moving to New York in the height, or kind of like right after the peak of COVID in 2021. What There wasn't a whole lot going on in the city, but I knew that I wanted to be there, and I just didn't want to waste any time. I mean, even if I didn't move, it wouldn't have been time wasted. But for me, I was like, I just gotta go and do it and like get on that grind. And that first year was grueling. One, just because there wasn't a whole lot going on. I was working like a catering job and like at a grocery store, and like on top of that, there's not a whole lot of auditions happening that aren't like it's just like smaller work that's also important, but it's just like, okay, when is something going to happen? And I think what I had read Failing Up by Leslie Odom Jr. and a big point in that book that he makes is like, before you give up, I want to see you try first. Just because you may not be working doesn't mean that you can't call someone, email someone, pick up a book, sing for 20 minutes, drink an extra glass of water. Like, what is something that there's a quote, do something every day that gets you 1% better at whatever you're trying to exceed at. And that's enough. So I found my advice to students, and like what worked for me was like I just stopped asking for permission to be an artist and just live the life of an artist. I would sing daily. I would read books on performing or memoirs of actors that I look up to. And I feel like just leaning into that, like living the life of an artist, you give so much into it, hoping that it like loves you back. And eventually it will. You look up, you've done all these things, you've read all these books, you've sung for 100 days in a row, and it's like, oh shoot, this opportunity. I've met this opportunity with all the preparation I've been doing, and it really does work out in the end. So like, I found that just me having stopping ask for permission, that's what helped me overcome it. And then once I started booking stuff, it was like, okay, that's just that's how I want to be moving forward. Just like always growing, always learning. And that way, in the dry times, it's not, you may not be working, but you're still like making art and fulfilling that part of yourself.
Right. Absolutely. Love that. Thank you for sharing that. Brianna, how about you?
Yeah, so a lot of specific challenges come to mind, particularly in like the music industry, because it's such a bizarre and volatile industry. You're kind of dealing with like 100 small wins and failures and rejections like on a weekly basis. But the one that like really comes to mind that's huge in my career was literally when like COVID first happened. It was a huge blow. And where I was at in my career at that point, I was like, I guess, 6 years or so out of grad school, like well into my career as a professional, like running my business. At the time, I was essentially like 1 year into being like fully self-employed. I had made the leap from an arts marketing and admin job a year prior. So like I'm solely responsible for all the income coming in my door. My band that I was in was like positioning ourselves right prior to that to do a big push. Like we had just signed with a new booking agent. We were like potentially heading into the studio with a producer to do a project. We were like trying to book out a bunch of travel dates and tours. We had just done a pretty successful headlining show in Denver at a venue, literally like on March 6th. We did like of 2020, did like a single release show, like all of these things lined up, had new music coming out, all this stuff. And then when everything started to shut down in March of 2020, it's hard to like think about now how actually terrifying and scary that was if you were actively working in the industry as your livelihood, because I saw like 5 figures of guaranteed income for my business, and the band like wiped off our calendar in a matter of 4 days. That just got canceled, one after the other, like calls coming in and just dominoes falling. And I think I was really scared in that moment, like not only what my livelihood would look like, but like the livelihood of all of these friends of mine who, specifically who are like in band with me, but also like network of musicians that I know. I'm like, man, what does everyone kind of do? Like all of the work is gone essentially overnight. And I think what I ended up doing specifically during that time was I just like really pivoted pretty hard to other things that I was like partially already doing, but could lean into more. So that's when I actually really like refocused my management business on visual artists, because they were actually able to work a lot during that time period because they work solo and a lot of times they're working outside, and found a lot of growth in that area. I pivoted to some more consulting. I picked up some like arts marketing contract work for a couple different nonprofits that I knew. Basically just like immediately reached out to those connections and was like, hey, do you need help doing these things? And I really do think like came out of all of that stronger. Also during that time period, I really learned music production for the first time, built like my studio chops, my chops as like a producer, and like ended up with my husband like building a home studio, like all these new little skills that I kind of put in my knapsack. But I mean, it's easy to look back with like rose-colored glasses and be like, oh yeah, and we all came out with like personal growth, but it was a seriously scary time. And I think like, hopefully we never have to face something like quite that universally drastic again. But I think the lesson there is like all of us are really, really capable of doing like a lot, a wide variety and breadth of things that expand beyond maybe what we initially trained for or even what we're doing now. And you just have to like adapt and roll with it. So I'm glad we're all mostly on the other side of that now. No.
Right, exactly. Yeah, thank you very much for sharing that, Brianna. Let's move on to our last question. Can you provide a final word of advice for UNC Bears currently seeking a career in the field of entertainment? Let's start with you, Oscar.
I would say, first of all, like you are enough, right? I feel like we all have this thing that we're like aspiring to, that we're trying to reach, these goals, these really, really large goals. And that's great. But also understanding that like you belong in the spaces um that you're trying to be in, and like you can occupy some space. I think being your most authentic self wherever you go, especially in this industry, because like I said earlier, like people, once they get to know who you are, that determines like how they feel about you moving forward. And if you are a kind, thoughtful listener who's just like, wants to get to know people and work with people, then moving forward, they'll be like, oh man, I met this really nice kid, Oscar, the other day. Maybe we'll want to work with him on this. So I feel like that, and also just remaining, like you're going to graduate college, but like still have like the mind of a student, always learning, always growing. I feel like that's been like a common theme in this whole conversation, is that like you adaptability, just being able to like move and shake in the industry the way it's moving and shaking, so that you can stay up to date on technology, equity, diversity, and inclusion. Yourself, be aware of like who you are in this moment. Is there anything that you could be doing to better yourself today? Whether that's like I was saying earlier, singing for 20 minutes, having an extra glass of water, going on a walk, reading a book, contacting a friend or an old professor or something like that. So yeah, my advice would be to always keep learning and show up as your authentic true self wherever you go in life.
Love that. Words to live by, Oscar. Thank you. Brianna, how about you?
I think my word of advice is going to be pretty pragmatic, which is that you are the only person who gets to define like what being an artist means to you, and also like the idea of being like a full-time artist. I really advise students and early career people to not get super hung up on that being such a fixed idea, because all of these people on this panel all of the professionals that you meet, like they do a bunch of stuff, even if their primary identity is Broadway performer or performing musician or full like production assistant. Like just because you like take a day job, whether it's an arts admin or waiting tables or teaching lessons or something else, like that doesn't diminish your value as an artist or the strength of like your artistic vision. And honestly, sometimes those things can set you up to more successfully pursue your creative vision anyways. So I would just say like don't have such a fixed idea in mind of what that looks like. And you might also find as you get further into your career that like it, you know, some mix of things like feels better for you at that particular time anyways, and that's probably going to change. So stay open-minded about the mix of things you're doing professionally that are in service to your identity as an artist.
Yeah, love that. Thank you, Brianna. Hadley, how about you?
Yeah, I really love both the things that Oscar and Brianna said. I think it's really important that you don't like compare yourself to anyone because everybody's journey is so different. And I think that especially because artists are such a big community and we love to talk to each other, then it's really easy to see someone doing something else and being like, wait, but I'm not doing that right now. Like, should I be doing that? But no, you have to like let it happen at your own time. Like when I first moved out to Los Angeles, like I know I said my first production assistant job was on Succession, but for 2 months I was working at a pumpkin patch selling pumpkins for people, so like your journey is always going to be different. And I think it's also really important to not be focused on one career path. Like when I was 16, when I graduated high school, I wanted to be a Broadway performer. In some other life maybe, but that's not the career path that I want to go down right now. And I think it's really important that you say yes and you stay open to opportunities that people offer you because you never know what you're going to fall in love with, what you're going to be passionate about. I took a teacher's assistant position one time and I fell in love with producing and directing, and that's what I ended up ultimately going to college for and what I'm starting to do out here on smaller projects. So I think it's really important that you set goals for yourself, but that you don't like see them as the only end goal, that you keep your, I don't know, career ladder a hill. I don't know.
Yeah, I love that. I absolutely agree with everything that each of you have said. It really kind of comes down to being open and being confident in what you have to offer and whatever your skills are, but like each of you kind of said as well, not being so completely fixed and compartmentalizing yourself in this is exactly what I want to do, this is the only thing I'm going to pay attention to, because there might be some other opportunities coming to you along that path that you might not have thought about, you might not have known about, maybe, you just didn't kind of pay attention to them before, but they can be a kind of a stepping stone to perhaps your next step that you're not going to want to close yourself off to. So just being open and adaptable to whatever it is, opportunities that kind of come your way. And when you learn something about, another area maybe of your particular chosen field, learn a little bit more about that and try it out. See if that's something that might appeal to you. Because I never saw myself doing what I'm doing now, but I've been doing it for 20 years and I absolutely love it because somebody offered me a chance. And I said, oh, I don't know anything about that, but I'll try it out. And then I learned that I love it. So you have to be open to things like that for sure. So I think we are at the end of our panel. If you all, panelists, if you have any other comments that you want to make, you are more than welcome. Beyond that, just unmute yourself if you want to make any other comments. But beyond that, I just want to thank you all for your time. Thank you to all of you for joining us today. It's always an honor and a pleasure to host fellow bearers and hear about their UNC experience, unique identities, career paths, and industry insights. Throughout the semester, we'll be hosting virtual alumni career panels like this. To learn more, you can visit unco.edu/alumni/careers, and that's going to be in the chat as well. Before we end, our colleagues over at UNC's Center for Career Readiness wanted to share some insight into the resources that they offer to students and alumni. So I'm going to invite Diana, who's a career counselor over there, to introduce herself and tell us a little more about that.
Hi, everyone. My name is Diana, she, her pronouns. I'm the Associate Director at UNC's Center for Career Readiness, and I'm glad to be here. So we're here to support you with all the things career while we are a student and up to 3 years after graduation. Our office connects UNC students to employers through a career tool called Handshake. And then we host a lot of campus career fairs and workshops throughout the semesters. You can schedule appointments with our career counseling team for resume and cover letter reviews, anything about job search or internship search and graduate school help, mock interviews, networking tips, and much more. For further information, you can find all of this information on our website, and you can just email us at career.readiness@unco.edu.
Wonderful. Thank you, Diana. We appreciate your time coming today and sharing those resources with everyone. So with that, we are at the end of our panel today. Thank you to Brianna and Oscar and Hadley and Diana for joining us at the end. We appreciate all of you taking the time to share your expertise with us. All of the LinkedIn profile information for the panelists today has been put into the chat, and then this video should be available within the next week. The link also in the chat. Thank you everyone for joining us. We will be signing off. Have a great evening and go Bears. Bye-bye.